Hello, everyone, and I appreciate the introduction. As was mentioned, my name is Henry Gordon Smith. If I'm a little bit lower on energy, it's because it's 4:15 a.m. here in New York City. But I could not be more honored to come and speak virtually to an audience in Oman. Oman is an incredible country for agriculture, food, culture, everything. And I had the pleasure of actually living there for 4 months through the beginnings of COVID-19 and lockdowns. And despite the challenges, it was an incredible experience. And I'll tell you a little bit about that. But today I'm going to talk about controlled environment agriculture and method of agriculture and how it can be used in Oman to accelerate food quality and safety, which is the question, of course, today. So as I mentioned, I lived in Oman for a little bit accidentally, so to say, but my presence in the GCC has been active for, I would say, over 7 years now. Here are some images of my trips to the GCC, multiple trips per year. One of them here, the top left corner, is in a vertical farm in Sharjah in the UAE. On the right here, it's me with Her Excellency Mariam, the Minister of Food Security for the UAE, who I've advised and communicated with about the food security strategy of the UAE and the region overall. In the bottom, the pink one is another vertical farm in Dubai, Badia Farms. And then, of course, that's me and my Kuma in the Green Mountain in Oman when I was living there. And as I mentioned, I was visiting Oman for a business trip, and then the lockdown happened, and I was unable to leave the country for about 4 months. And I was hosted by a very kind Omani named Majid Al-Masrouri. And we spent a lot of time talking about Oman food security, quality of food in Oman, and how we could help the country be a leader in food security and technology as it relates to this. So it's really great for me to come and speak to all of you today and to share some of those ideas. But first, I'll talk a little bit about why controlled environment agriculture relates to food security, some examples, and then I'll talk about some specific suggestions for Oman. So this is Agritecture. We are an urban agriculture consulting firm, but we're much more than that. We provide really thorough strategies to corporations, governments, and those individuals who are starting or have existing farms. But our focus area is growing locally and growing through controlled environment agriculture. And so we provide data, strategy, and also connections and network to help people understand how to develop these farms most effectively and maintain them. This is a little timeline of our impact. A sample of our impact is a small firm. We've had the great privilege and honor of working around the world. But we're essentially the first consulting firm focused on urban ag tech, bringing it into the city. And I never thought it would grow as much as it did, but it's been such an honor to work with such a range of clients. In 2015, we developed these series of workshops where we'd help individuals understand how to grow food in the city and develop specific methodologies for that. We did that in 12 different cities around the world. And then in 2016, we consulted the world's first vertical farming accelerator. This is an accelerator intended to grow more food indoor and in cities, and had 10 entrepreneurs with 1 year to develop a farming business out of a container. And this was also very cool because Elon Musk's brother, Kimball Musk, was the one who founded this business. And so it was exciting to consult that kind of a client who was very focused on technology. And I'll show you an example of that coming up in a moment. We designed Manhattan's first vertical farm, Farm One. I'll show you a little bit about that as well. We built an ag tech lab. Imagine like a WeWork, a place where you can come and rent a desk for a day, a week, or a month, but it's for ag tech. It's a place where you can ask questions. It's a place where you can learn and network. It's a place where you can incubate your ideas. In 2018, we actually designed another one of those, that was the accelerator, but in 2019 we designed another one of those focused on hardware, so specifically around ag tech hardware technologies. And then 2020, we launched our farm planning software, which I'll also show you in a moment. So this is our impact around the world. As I mentioned, we provide services around feasibility studies. So how feasible is planning your greenhouse or vertical farm? If that's a question you have anywhere in the world, we are very equipped to answer that question, what the ROI will be, what crops you should grow, what size and scale and technology. We design the farms as well, and we provide food system planning. As I mentioned, some of these strategies that we provide for governments as well. So it's been very exciting to have such a global impact as a relatively small company. I wanted to just talk about controlled environment agriculture as a part of urban agriculture. So this is a spectrum just to kind of help you understand where it fits. These are different types of farming in the city. all of them have value. They have different impacts. Soil is great for community and great for managing the environment. But if we go to more the high-tech side, Sky Vegetables and Aero Farms, these are what we call controlled environment agriculture. So that means that we are controlling the environment around the plants to maintain the right temperature, to maintain all of the right conditions, water, temperature, ventilation, but also to provide sort of a safety and protection for the plants from pests and from contamination, from food safety contamination. So that can be a greenhouse or it can be a vertical farm, but these ones really fit in that category. And I just wanted to help you understand where controlled environment agriculture fits in the realm of these other aspects, because I have a question for you coming up. So I want you to ask yourself, contamination, right? This is one of the issues with food safety is you have someone doesn't wash their hands and it gets on the plants and that gets sick. So I gave you one clue there. But if we think about these three different methods, a soil-based farm outdoors or a greenhouse or a vertical farm, what are the main sources of contamination? How does contamination happen to the plants in those? I don't know if people can answer questions on this, probably not. But just think about how you would answer that question. For soil, what are the sources of contamination? For a greenhouse, what are the sources of contamination? For a vertical farm? So maybe while you're thinking about it, you may think about animals on a farm that could contaminate the crops. You could think about water storage that could contaminate the crops as it's outdoors. You could think about various pests, issues like that can happen. Contamination from other farms can happen outdoors soil. I mean, really, because you're soil-based, you're completely exposed to whatever's happening in the outside environment. So your levels of contamination or the ways you can experience contamination in your crops are the most significant relative to other types of farms. If I have a greenhouse, I can still contaminate the crop by having someone from my staff not practice food safety and get the crops contaminated with E. coli or something worse. God forbid. But if I'm in a vertical farm, I've really tried to close that off as much as possible. So I don't have any outside ventilation. I don't have no animals coming in. In greenhouses, you can still have a bird fly through ventilation. You get different issues. But vertical farming is one way of responding to these contamination issues by saying, let's control everything. Let's create basically HEPA filter protected clean rooms so contamination doesn't happen. So that's one of the reasons why vertical farming is having such a rise of investment and interest right now, especially in the United States, where food safety issues have become really in the forefront of the consumer's mind and happen so consistently. I mean, it's certainly increasing and accelerating the amount of food safety issues that are happening in the United States. And many of them are with leafy green products like romaine lettuce or different kinds of lettuces that are actually relatively easy to grow in vertical farms and greenhouses. So there's this whole movement now in the US of saying controlled environment agriculture, growing indoors, equals food safe. And you may not agree with that, but I think, again, just asking this question where sources of contamination can come from show us that controlled environment agriculture already has less sources of contamination than soil-based farming. So when we think about Oman, we can think about, okay, well, what are the crops where we're having food safety issues, and what are the crops we can grow indoors viably to start to create more trust in the food system? Here are some projects that Agritecture has worked on that might inspire you. This is Farm 1. It's a small vertical farm, but it's a boutique one. It's about 120 square meters approximately. But what's cool about this one is because it provides food to restaurants, it's got 500 products. So it's not lettuce. It's really unusual herbs and flowers, etc. It's also, since COVID, adapted to contactless delivery, delivering it straight to customers at home. Now, this is about trust, is the story here, right? So consumers here can connect with the farm so directly. It's in Manhattan. It's 30 minutes maximum delivery to their house from the farm, and they get it in these containers that are reusable. So they're very much engaging with the farm and connecting with them. So in combination with the contactless delivery, the fact that it's grown indoors and food safety protocols are practiced, plus the trust that they know where it comes from and they know it hasn't gone to any middleman, it's one of the reasons that makes Farm 1 a very food safe solution. Square Roots is a really cool client, as I mentioned, very tech focused, and we had a great honor working with them. Soon after we consulted them, they developed a Trace the Taste program. And this is a program where the product has a barcode, like the colleague before mentioned, and you could actually trace the flavor or trace the crop when it's grown. So if you scanned it, you can see this is the moment that the seed was put in, and there's going to be a picture sometimes of that seed being placed. You can see when it's moved from seedling into the systems as part of transplanting, and then when that's harvested, when that's packed and shipped to you. So if you care about that, you can look at that. Now, I think this is a little bit far. Like, I'm not sure how many consumers really care about consistently checking on that, but I think the fact that they created it already is something they can talk about and creates trust in the product automatically, just by knowing that they are tracking these things. Smallhold is interesting, and I wanted to highlight it because it's really about quality in this case. I mean, they practice a lot of food safety, but this is another farm in New York. It's a vertical farm that grows mushrooms. They have big warehouses, and they also do small systems in restaurants and in supermarkets. But what they've done here is they've pursued organic certification, which is, obviously a certification around the highest quality of food, and it's a certification that's about taking care of the earth. But it's the first and only organic certified farm in New York City, which is really cool to think about how even farms in cities can pursue some of the most prestigious certifications for quality. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Yeah, I tend to speak quickly, especially when it's early in the morning. Um, Slowing down, this is Sky Vegetables. This is a hydroponic greenhouse in the Bronx. So it's a rooftop greenhouse. And I think this one's really interesting because it's a case of how you can bring in growing indoors and connect it to buildings and community. So this is not a greenhouse that's separate from the community. It's actually connected to a building with hundreds of apartments in it. Some of those people work in the farm, and certainly those individuals benefit from the product in the farm. And you can see here, this is one of the young men that works in the farm from the community in the Bronx. He grew up in a community which actually has very low access to fresh food. It's considered a food desert in New York City. And this farm is now stimulating not only access to fresh and clean food for him and his community, but it's teaching him skills. You can see he's wearing his gloves. He's learned food safety protocols. Agritecture has operated this farm for many years, so we know it very well. This is where I first learned hydroponics. And so one of the things we teach them is food safety. We have appropriate signage through the facility, washing hands before you enter, washing your feet. And so even though the farm is indoors, we create food safety protocols. And that's also a great benefit to a community that doesn't have a lot of access to food, but also doesn't have a lot of access to job opportunities in this. So the point is that you can actually use these methods of production to stimulate community aspects around agriculture and teach very important job skills around food safety that can apply not only to farms, but also restaurants and supermarket work or distribution centers. Teens for Justice is another education-focused example. In this case, they build vertical farms in schools, and they teach the students, you can see the gloves here again, they teach the students how to handle food with care, how to take care of it, because it's going to be going into someone's body. And so a lot of it is about teaching skills and habits, but also a lot of it is the fact that these farms are indoors already. When you grow crops like this indoors, you don't use pesticides, so it's already cleaner for the customer, and you don't necessarily need to wash it. Some places ask you to or recommend you do, but there's nothing sprayed on the plant. So, even giving it a light rinse is enough, and then you can sort of trust that nothing's been on it. And so those are some of the case studies I just wanted to show you to think about the possibilities from greenhouses to containers to accelerators. There's always a way to bring food safety and quality into it. And controlled environment agriculture, these indoor systems, provide unique opportunities to stimulate food safety and quality. Let's take a step back and look globally at some of the drivers, the conditions that would facilitate going indoors. Because obviously going indoors when you build a greenhouse or vertical farm is more expensive upfront than outdoor soil-based production, because I have to build all this engineering. But there's certain drivers that could justify that, certain conditions that would justify spending that money. And this is a simple exercise you can do on your own. Here on the left, we have conditions: water scarcity, food safety, food security, limited land for production, unfavorable weather, or premium demand for local food. And then on the top, we have regions in the world. And this is my opinion of what I think some of the conditions are that are accelerating vertical farming, a very expensive form of controlled environment agriculture. And as you can see here, the GCC really has all of these drivers. It is ripe for the conditions to be a leader in controlled environment agriculture. It has the biggest possible short-term opportunities for controlled environment agriculture in the world. And as it works to bring these forms of agriculture into its strategy, as the ministry brings that in more into the strategy and it shows leadership, I think that Oman especially can be a real leader across the GCC in this sector. Wide open. You hear a lot of announcements about the UAE doing this, but there's still a lot of room to catch up and a lot of room to innovate that I think Oman should jump on and be the leader in quality and safe. And you hear me say that a lot because I think they go together. Quality and safe food go together. So let's just talk a bit about food safety a little bit more, and then I'm going to get into some recommendations. So again, this is just a short slide to say it's a really important issue. People are getting sick from food. People, when you go to the store and you buy food, you have so much trust in that farmer and that company that produced that food and all the people that transported that food to you. There's such a responsibility. And so when bacteria or when some contaminant gets on it, it can make you really sick. And this is, again, something that happens a lot. It's not something that happens very little. It's also something that has a cost, as was mentioned by my previous speaker, to the companies, to the consumers, to the brand, etc. So let's go back to Oman, beautiful Oman. This is, of course, a picture of Salalah, one of the beautiful places I got to visit. And in Oman, there's 3 strategies I'm recommending to improve food safety and quality. The first one is really to accelerate and strengthen food safety certification programs. When I go to the store, I should be able to see the products that have been verified as food safe first. I should be able to do that because it helps me understand which products are going to be good for me and my family. And the government should play a significant role in that certification. But it also helps farmers that are investing more in quality compete. If you're producing a product in an indoor environment and you're focused on a higher quality product, you shouldn't have to compete just on price with someone that's growing outdoors and isn't concerned about the safety of the consumer. You should be able to stand out and be able to get a better price, a higher price in some cases for that. And consumers should be educated through certification schemes that transparency and that quality, it costs some more money, a little bit more money. And so I think that connection of a premium certification for food safety could go a long way, and also could be a sign of Oman's exports of quality of food to its neighbors, but also globally in the future. So again, there's ways to do transparency programs like Trace the Taste. There's a lot of controls and processes that can be developed. And this is, I think, something that would be very, very critical for Oman to do. The second strategy is just making it so easy, even if you're not certified, to learn food safety. Oman could do a really high quality in-person and even preparing for that through COVID, online classes for food safety. And so these classes can cover the basics of understanding where contamination happens in your farm, how to look out for issues. You could have free printouts of signage for staff to help them understand when they should wash hands, and just teach the basics of food safety so that every single farmer has access to food safety training affordably and fast. And I think that that's going to be a really good way to bring the Omani food community together, because you could have a way for these people to take certifications and work together on asking questions and chat about their challenges with food safety and create more best practices. But I think that this would be a really great investment to, again, elevate the quality and the brand that Oman already has in food. My final one relates to some of the work that we've done, which is creating incubators around this. So imagine an incubator in Muscat that's focused on technologies for food quality and food safety. So in quality, we're talking about things that help us understand nutrition, improve nutrition. This could be related to breeding. This could be related to multispectral imaging. These can be related to some of the exciting technologies that are about nutrition and technology. And so that's something that creates these new startup businesses, this culture around quality, which would be very, very exciting and get Muscat on the map as really a food and ag tech destination for investors, which would be very important for Oman to pursue. On the food safety side, you can also have that in the incubator as well. So technologies like Trace the Taste, blockchain technologies, many, many different ideas that could happen as Oman starts to invest more into food safety, businesses can develop around the technologies to enable that. And I think that this would be a really good response and would be very popular actually amongst Omani entrepreneurs, and something that Oman could do to really extend its legacy into this new century. A little bit about Agritecture and how it's helping with this. We have actually developed a software that helps others learn about controlled environment agriculture and plan these facilities at a very budgeted cost. So your initial estimates for these farms can be developed on our software, Agritecture Designer. One of the things we have is actually online classes. So while we don't have a food safety certification, we teach the basics of food safety through our online classes, and we teach how you should run and operate and plan controlled environment agriculture facilities. We've got downloads of economic models and various tools to help you be successful. We also have tools that let you do market research about your crop and who your customer would be. And we also have tools that let you estimate the capital cost and operational cost of any greenhouse or vertical farm. So just to repeat again, you can use our software, you can learn the basics of controlled environment agriculture online, and then you can plan a farm and the economic and the business case for that in Muscat or anywhere else in Oman. I was actually looking at our data, and about 3% of our users globally for our software are from Oman. So it's been great to see that Omanis are already using our software and benefiting from it as they think about controlled environment agriculture. We also provide education and training, online and in-person workshops. So these are customized to groups. Let's say there's a group that wants to do a food safety training. We are available for that. Let's say there's groups that want to talk about design for controlled environment agriculture or entrepreneurship. Many, many examples. These are all past clients we've worked with. We worked with children's hospitals on designing farms and doing workshops for them, large corporations, architects, real estate developers, you name it. As you can see, Agritecture is